Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's Room of Choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Oh yeah, look at my life, hey now, yeah. Oh yeah, look at my life out here on the road. Oh yeah, look at my life, hey now, yeah. Oh yeah, look at my life out here on the road.
Hey now! What's happening, friends? Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. I'm excited about this episode. I think this is going to be one of those ones that a lot of people share with their friends and family members and neighbors and coworkers that are doubters. Because today I'm going to play a lot of the Prime Minister for you. He is doing a number of media availabilities, and you're going to hear from him on this. Part of the other reason that I think people are going to share this episode is I'm going to talk more about Bill C-22. There are some committee hearings happening right now into Bill C-22. If you're a regular listener, you know I've got serious privacy concerns about this. But forget me. Let's hear the privacy concerns from the big tech conglomerates. You're going to hear from Apple and you're going to hear from Google in this episode of Scott Fox After 9. Like I said, there's a ton to get to, so let's jump right into it. Earlier this morning, the Prime Minister at a defense conference in Ottawa announced that Canada is buying some Swedish planes, but not those Swedish Gripen fighter jets that some want us to buy. Instead of the F-35s, we're buying some surveillance planes, and that's probably good for our overall defense. Here's the Prime Minister with a warning, though. Whoever set up his media kit here did a terrible job, and the sound quality for streaming was terrible, but you'll make out what he's saying. It just doesn't sound that great.
The domestic ammunition production, to over-the-horizon radar, to quantum, cyber, AI, and drones. We're building and partnering with Canadian materials, Canadian expertise, and Canadian workers across this country. We're protecting Canada's ability to act independently in a more dangerous and divided world. You know, we used to build in this country. We had built one of the largest aircraft and naval fleets by the end of the Second World War. Canada built one of the world's first autonomous submarines, one of the first drones used by NATO forces. The message today, thanks to you and our new strategy, is we are now building again.
Hey, criticize the Prime Minister all you want. I think that's the responsible thing to do. Like it or not, we're committed to getting to 5% of our GDP committed to NATO spending. We've got to spend it on something. We might as well spend it on practical things. Ordering these planes is going to create some jobs in Canada because some of them are going to be built in Canada. Let's get the rest of the defense sector going. Let's get whatever it is we need. We have to go on a shopping spree, so let's go on a shopping spree and make sure that our armed forces have the best available equipment. I think the Prime Minister is on the right track there. He's trying to stick handle it a little bit too. You can tell he's preparing both sides for bad news. In ordering these planes today, he's telling the Swedes, we're not ordering your Gripen jets. He's telling the Americans, we're not ordering surveillance aircraft from you, but we will order the F-35s. And while he hasn't said that yet, it's now all but a guarantee that our pilots are finally going to get those F-35 jets that they want and need. Let's go now to more of the Prime Minister. This was him speaking at a news conference prior to the speech that you just heard.
First and foremost, what I want to do is thank Mr. Stephen Guilbeault, for his many contributions, for the members of his riding, first and foremost, a dedicated MP for Ville Saint-Marie for these years, for the people of Canada, for the government, for the cabinet, for myself and his vice. We've worked together. We worked together when I was UN Special Representative on climate action and finance as well. So we worked together closely in a variety of areas, and I've always enjoyed working with him. And then, in terms of the follow-up questions, of course, it's for him to make decisions about his career and the next stage of career. All aspects of all our careers, even journalists, even prime ministers, get to a point where things change and people make decisions. And I very much respect that. And as I say, I've enjoyed it, and I wish him all the best. And I'm sure in some way, shape, or form, we'll have an opportunity to continue to work together on issues of interest.
Okay, the Prime Minister is basically getting ahead of Stephen Guilbeault, announcing that he is leaving the Liberal Party. What remains to be seen, though, with this guy, one of the most divisive ministers in history. I actually heard the CBC refer to him last night as a climate activist. Stephen Guilbeault should not let the door hit him on the way out. That guy had to go. He's part of the reason that we've got such big problems with Alberta right now. He's an environmental ideologist. I don't think he ever should have been in cabinet. The guy is, I'll save my personal opinion. It doesn't matter what I think of him. Is he going to step down from the Liberal Party, or is he going to step down as a member of Parliament? That is the little nuance that we've got to watch for. If he steps down as a member of Parliament, well, Mark Carney's majority is basically gone. Yeah, see how easily things can change? No more majority government for the Liberals. If Stephen Guilbeault is going to leave the Liberal Party but continue sitting as a member of Parliament, well, I mean, that doesn't help either. That means he's going to vote with the Liberals on everything except for climate issues. I don't know. Is there anybody out there? It's got to be a real small number whose number one issue is climate change right now. Well, that's all Stephen Guilbeault cares about. He's not thinking about any of the other issues. If he's going to quit, he should quit. He should walk away. He's already got his pension. Go away and leave Canadians alone. That's what I think Stephen Guilbeault should do. But we'll wait and see what his announcement is. Again, is he leaving the Liberal Party and going to sit as an independent? That's like not leaving the Liberal Party. He's going to vote Liberal on basically every vote. Or is he leaving as a member of Parliament? Well, that would mean Mark Carney's majority is effectively gone because he's appointing two other people, and that's going to mean two other by-elections need to be held. Now let's go to the Prime Minister talking a little bit about pipelines and Alberta.
How do you think the ongoing debate about separation in Alberta and upcoming referendum question is going to affect the likelihood or chances that a private sector proponent may come forward to build a West Coast pipeline?
Well, it's... First and foremost, I think what we do as the federal government is we continue to work collaboratively with Alberta, with British Columbia, with First Nations, in this case, First Nations, well, I should say Indigenous peoples because Métis as well, to ensure that if there is a pipeline or related carbon capture or interties between the electricity grids and or nuclear and or other components of this, that it benefits all of the parties and works with all of the parties. In that way, we make two things more likely. One, we make the actual economic activity there more likely, lower emissions more likely, as well as...
I'm done. No. I am not going to listen to another rant about lowering emissions and selling carbon-free or low-carbon oil and LNG. I'm just not going to do it anymore. There's no reason for the federal government to intervene here with environmental ideology. It's very simple. We all agree we need a pipeline. Alberta is itching to build a pipeline, and the Prime Minister is trying everything he possibly can to not say yes. He threw up objections about carbon capture. He's hiding behind First Nations, by the way, completely hiding behind them, hoping that they tank this so he doesn't have to. Prime Minister Carney wants to show Alberta, sure, I'm a pipeline guy. And he wants to show environmentalists, I'm an environmentalist. You can't have it both ways, apparently. I thought you could. The Prime Minister thinks he has by allowing a pipeline, sort of, and then requiring it to invest in carbon capture technology. That's not going to solve the problem. That is completely untested technology. And I mean, we don't need to relitigate the same arguments. I think everybody gets where I'm going with this here. The Prime Minister needs to get out of the way. Get out of the way. If a province comes to him with a major project that's good for them and good for the country, the answer should be yes, right away. No objections. Unless it's going to do serious damage to our ecosystems, unless it's going to, create a national security concern, the answer should almost always be yes, emphatically, and thank you. This prime minister trying to interject himself into every deal is getting really annoying because if you haven't noticed, nothing is getting built. The prime minister is on his way to New York. Some people think it's to talk about trade with the Americans. It kind of is, but not with the U.S. government.
You are heading to New York tomorrow.
Yeah.
What recent movement have you seen on U.S. trade issues, if at all, and do you expect any movement with your meetings tomorrow?
Well, the meetings tomorrow these are private sector meetings. These are with a series of institutions that are either heavily invested in Canada, interested in investing in Canada, and it's sensible to give the story. It's a very efficient use of time to give the story. A lot has changed in Canada, and we're moving forward at speed. You just have to just refer back to what we're discussing here. $500 billion of defense-related investment in the course of the next decade in Canada. Even in New York, that's real money. That's of interest, and there's opportunities to partner, and those will be the discussions. It's not a trade mission in that sense in terms of trade negotiations. In terms of the overall negotiations, there's ongoing conversations. Minister LeBlanc with his counterpart, including upcoming meetings that he will be having. Thank you.
Interesting. Who's he going to meet with then in New York? Because I note that's where he moved Brookfield to. Is he going to meet with Brookfield or any of their subsidiaries? Is he going to take some personal time and go visit with his family? Because they live there. His kids go to school there in the U.S. Interesting. I'd like to know a little bit more about this trip. I hope that the Prime Minister's office is going to be very transparent about who the Prime Minister meets with and what the discussions are. Let's go on to another one from the Prime Minister. This one is juicy.
Does the visit of China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi later this week pave the way for a visit by President Xi Jinping? And you've said previously that there are guardrails in place in Canada against foreign interference, yet your government has not released publicly the RCMP MOU signed with Chinese police. Why is that?
We don't make a habit. I'll answer the second part of the question first. We don't make a habit of releasing security documents with other governments for reasons of operational security. That is standard practice for this government, previous governments as well. So I don't see a reason to change that in this circumstance. So thank you for that question. But
before I get to his answer on part one, why is that? Why can't Canadians know at least the top line details of what deal Mark Carney signed up the RCMP for to share intelligence and cooperate with the Chinese police? Why can't he tell us what they're sharing? Basic stuff. He won't share anything? Why is that? Because there are very legitimate and verified concerns about the Chinese's activities here in Canada. I don't understand why he wouldn't answer that. That should be very simple. What did you sign us up for? What is it our police are going to be sharing with the Chinese and vice versa? What advantage is that to the Canadian people? That's shady. That's something that we got to circle back on because foreign interference has been an issue identified numerous times over the years, and this government hasn't done anything to stop it, nearest I can tell.
And that's what we stay to. I look forward to the visit of China's foreign minister tomorrow. I will have a chance to meet with him. It'll be a valuable exchange of views, and I appreciate his arrival. Thank you.
Yeah. He didn't say if the Chinese president was coming. Is that weird? He was asked specifically, is tomorrow's visit to pave the way for the big guy to come? The Prime Minister didn't answer that, and I'm not sure why. That also is a little weird. He's being very evasive all of a sudden. Have you guys noticed that? What's up with Carney? Much more guarded. Much more guarded. Let's hear a little bit more from him in this news conference prior to the speech that I began this episode with.
Yeah, Prime Minister, I'm hoping you can clarify some remarks that you made after the scrum on Monday. When you were leaving the press conference, you spoke with Minister Robertson, and I want to read what you set out. What are you doing? This is stupid. You've got an off-ramp. Take it. That to me sounds like you're talking about Danielle Smith and the Alberta referendum question.
I was talking to Minister Robertson.
But can you clarify what you were discussing at that point in time? Because the scrum was about what Ms. Smith had done.
No, it was about Minister Robertson. Look, I have, I think if I'm gonna take your question about the relationship with Canada and Alberta, Canada and the federal government and the provinces, and we practice cooperative federalism. We work together. What we're focused on is making the federation work. We're doing that with Alberta. With respect to a variety of aspects of energy. It's much more than a pipeline. It's nuclear. It's interconnects with British Columbia. It's a new industry of carbon capture. It's restarting the renewable market. It's getting a carbon market that actually works, that other provinces can be able to join, so we can broaden out a national carbon market. That's what we're doing there. We're here talking about
carbon markets. That's what he's into. He loves that stuff. Carbon markets. Now, if you don't know what that means, you don't need to. But I will tell you, it is not for your benefit. That is for corporations, trading credits, getting tax breaks. It's craziness that's going to cost the average Canadian a hell of a lot of money. That's what that is. That is just like the carbon tax. Those carbon markets are going to cost you and I a fortune. I'm going to move on. There's just a couple more from the Prime Minister. Yesterday, he was commenting on the Alberta referendum. And I will give the Prime Minister credit in that so far, he is one of the few who's drawing a distinction. What Albertans are going to vote on in October is not whether or not to leave Canada. In October, they're going to vote on whether or not they should have a binding referendum on leaving Canada. It's a vote to decide if they're going to have a vote. But after the last threat of Quebec separating, we got the Clarity Act. And the Clarity Act is supposed to be clear about how a province could leave the Canadian Union. 50% plus one is the way I understood the condition. You need to have a majority, 50% plus one. If majority say we're gone, they're gone. The Prime Minister sees it a different way.
Is 50 plus one enough?
No, it is not. It is not. For under a Clarity Act, it is absolutely not. And I would just recommend that you read the Clarity Act. It's very clear. Not surprisingly, the Clarity Act is very clear. And a determination, and there's a series of conditions, which I responded in the House for the record.
Is 50 plus one enough?
Very clear.
Is 50 plus one?
I gave. Just to be clear, because it is a question about a question. I mean, it doesn't. It's not it's explicit in the question that it's not a binding referendum. This is what I expected, but as I said in French, that as Prime Minister on particular issues of a constitutional nature, I like to make sure I have the official advice before us, which is why yesterday I was careful in terms of mine.
What does the Prime Minister mean there? 50 plus one is not enough. How many people do need to vote for separation? I just want to give some unsolicited advice to the Prime Minister and to every Liberal politician. They see this as the wedge they've been waiting for. They all want to put on the cape and say, we're Captain Canada, defending Canada's freedom and defending Canada as a union. Alberta, they're bad. They're evil people. They want to break up our union. That is not the way to deal with this. The people of Alberta have legitimate, bona fide complaints over how they've been treated for many years, not the least of which the last 10 under Justin Trudeau and a year of Mark Carney. They have bona fide concerns and they've had enough. They're going to have a vote to decide if they're going to have a vote to leave Canada. Demonizing them, talking down to them, moving the goalpost, none of that is going to help. It is going to increase suspicion amongst regular run-of-the-mill Alberta swing voters who get a vote too. And when they vote, if it seems like the whole country is against them, that makes them far more likely to want to leave. If it seems like the whole country is trying to show them we want them, they're far more likely to stay. The Prime Minister has got to change his tone. He has got to.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. 100. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Let's get on to the Bill C-22 stuff. Yesterday, committee hearings happening in Ottawa. Tech executives answering questions from members of Parliament. Listen very carefully to all of these clips. I'm going to start off with Jeanette Patel. She is from Google. This is only 20 seconds long.
We've put forward 4 recommended amendments. A few others relate to both the metadata retention provisions and to the sweeping nature of ministerial orders. That's something that we believe is unprecedented and unnecessary, and therefore we would recommend the elimination of secret ministerial orders as well.
I think most Canadians would agree with that. The secret ministerial orders that are in Bill C-22 that make it so sinister, they should get rid of those. That's what Google is telling the government. The government's not going to get rid of those. They're really not. They like those. They want those. That's part of the reason they're doing it. In fact, maybe why are they doing it is a question that's on your mind. Let's go to Conservative MP Roman Baber. He is talking to a Google executive, a different one, about Bill C-22.
I just want to clarify that the public safety minister, the government, CSST, RCMP, they already have an ability to seek a search warrant, to obtain a search warrant, and ask Google to comply with requests for information. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So if we already have that, you just have to go and ask a judge, why do we need this new legislation where this can all be done in secret and they can't even disclose to you what information they've handed over about you? Let's hear a little bit more. Another tech executive, I believe this is one from Apple.
My name is Eric Neunschwander, and I'm the Senior Director of User Privacy and Child Safety at Apple, where I've been a software engineer for 19 years. I worked as the first data analysis engineer on the first iPhone and founded Apple's privacy engineering team. Today, my job is to make sure that Apple's products and services keep our users' information safe. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. As you know, this may be one of the last times we're permitted to discuss the consequences of this legislation publicly. That's because of the bill's secrecy provisions, which forbid companies like Apple from even discussing the orders we receive with our users or the public. So today, I want to be clear about how we approach privacy at Apple. And I want to be clear on why encryption is so important to defending the privacy and security of people in Canada and around the world. These issues have never been more important because our world is becoming more digital by the day. As users, we depend on our technology to securely store and process highly sensitive data, like health metrics, photos, and the locations of our loved ones. The places where we keep our money, store our files, and conduct business are increasingly online, and sometimes only online. And the critical infrastructure we often take for granted, from the electric grid to transportation networks, is increasingly dependent on connected devices as well.
And the federal government wants access to all of it. All of it. The federal government is not asking for the ability to compel these companies to allow backdoor access into our devices, to turn on devices remotely so they can listen. They're not doing that for your good. It's a gross violation of your privacy. And here's the ironic part. You've got politicians that are pushing for this. This is why it's being debated in committee right now, because the Liberals have proposed this to be law. The tech companies, there's Google and Apple opposing it. They are trying to protect our privacy. The government is not. But the perception when you watch the news or you hear the politicians talk is that the politicians are on our side and those evil big tech giants, they're awful. They're terrible people. They're the ones trying to protect our freedom. Here's more of that Apple executive.
Our users trust Apple with their most sensitive information. They expect and deserve the strongest protections. That's why we're so concerned about the threat to encryption posed by C-22. As drafted, this bill allows the Government of Canada to force companies to break encryption by inserting backdoors into their products, something Apple will never do.
I hope that people take the time, and I'm asking you as a listener, but not just you. I'm asking you to talk to your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, what have you, about Bill C-22. This doesn't need to be a divisive one. This isn't liberal versus conservative. This is government versus the people. The government wants to give themselves unprecedented surveillance power over the people. Tech companies are standing up saying, no, we do not want to give you backdoor access to our systems. And on top of that, not even be able to talk about it. Not even allowed to discuss it if there's a secret ministerial order. Every Canadian should be deeply concerned about Bill C-22. And it's time to tell this government enough, no more. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. We've been going a little heavy here. I talked about the Prime Minister. I've talked about Bill C-22. Yesterday, a little sign of hope and optimism and ingenuity. NASA held a moon, it was a moon conference, but it was a news conference about the moon. And one of the things they announced is they're building a permanent base that could span several kilometers. People are going to be living full-time on the south pole of the moon. Here is a little bit of NASA announcing the details.
So let's get started. This is a chart that kind of describes the vision that we delivered during Ignition Day. We envision the moon base to be hundreds of square miles with different assets, all building up to the objective of permanent lunar presence on the moon. To get there, we're going to break it up in phases, and phase 1 has already started. From now through 29, we're going to work to make sure that getting to the lunar surface is a high reliability endeavor. Many assets we can deliver there. We're also going to test and experiments. The science of survival, as the administrator said. We're going to experiment on the things that we know are ahead of us that we're going to need to build a permanent infrastructure, which is happening on phase 2, and then permanent habitation on phase 3. To do this, we're building and working on many different systems, from transportation to mobility, and we've broadcasted a pretty high cadence of missions that will help us to get there. Phase 1, for example, will have 25 launches, 21 landings, and we're planning to deliver about 4 metric tons of cargo to the surface of the moon. And we want to graduate from that to 60 metric tons to 150 by the time we get to phase 3.
Wow, that's incredible. But are you kidding me? Within 8 years, NASA is going to build a base that's several hundred kilometers on the moon. If they can do that in the next 8 years, we should be able to build a pipeline to British Columbia's northwest coast by Labor Day. Come on. It's an incredible achievement. Not taking anything away from NASA. That's great. But it does put into perspective how quickly you can get things done if you want them done. Now let's go to something else. Rand Paul, senator in America, one of the things that he was calling for recently was the prosecution of Dr. Anthony Fauci for how he conducted himself during COVID. He suspects that we don't know the whole story. He sat down and did an interview, I believe this was yesterday, and he was talking about the lab in Wuhan where COVID came from. I know. You're thinking, no, Scott, you made a mistake. Didn't come from a lab in Wuhan. It came from a wet market because somebody ate a bat. That's how the whole global pandemic started. Somebody ate a bat in a wet market in Wuhan. Not necessarily. Listen to this.
Everywhere I looked, I found intel agencies. You look at Jeremy Farrar. He's head of something called Wellcome Trust over in England. Well, it's Burroughs Wellcome. It's a big pharmaceutical company. The family left a big trust. They fund a lot of grants. It's a private organization. The head of it is a former head of the MI5. Everywhere you look, there are these people in and out of the spook community. They're all spies. We started looking at the scientists, and we find out many of them work for the government. They don't release this, but we found out in our investigation, Peter Daszak and Ralph Barrick both were informants for the intelligence agency. They get paid to do this, and they were both commissioned to give their opinion on where they think the virus came from. Well, these two guys were the long-standing collaborators with Dr. Shi in Wuhan. They had worked on the gain-of-function experiments that may have led to COVID, and we're asking them their opinion. So once again, it's the conspiracy. No one had to tell them to lie. No one had to tell them to cover up. They covered up to cover their own ass, basically. They were involved with this research. If the research led to the pandemic, they share responsibility. So what is their conclusion going to be? Came from nature. Goes back to that whole spring of 2020. There's a letter to Lancet. And this is where you really see the culpability of these people. Ralph Barrick and Peter Daszak organized the letter. And the letter's to say, these people are nuts. They're conspiracy theorists who say it came from a lab. But in the email exchanges back and forth, we have Ralph Barrick, the coronavirus scientist from UNC, who's been working with them in Wuhan. We have him saying, or Peter Daszak says to him, Ralph, maybe you shouldn't put your name on here. We really need the appearance of independence with this letter. But that is the circle of government scientists, that are basically hired by the government that are giving us back information, but they have a conflict of interest. We also have other scientists, the ones who wrote the Proximal Origins article that Fauci commissioned and edited. At least one of them got a $9 million grant. We have him on the phone saying, oh my goodness, it looks like it was genetically engineered. It looks like we've got a virus that could have come from a lab. And 3 days later, he's working on a paper to say definitively it couldn't have come from the lab. And a month or two later, he gets a $9 million grant.
Stinks, right? Maybe you're wondering, Scott, why does this matter? Why does it matter? Did it come from nature or did it come from a lab? Let me explain to you the difference. If it came from nature, it's a phenomenon of nature. If it came from a lab, that means it was genetically engineered and it was used as a weapon against people. For what reason? Was it population control? Was it the control that governments loved having during the pandemic? I don't know. I'm really not sure, but I'm very curious to see where this goes. If you are following the UFO drops that are coming from the U.S. government, you might want to look into the drop that came down yesterday. I only did a cursory glance, but one of the things that I noticed from there is they shot down a UFO over Lake Huron. Yeah, they shot down a UFO over Lake Huron. And the U.S. government may be hanging on to matter, whether it is damage or aliens themselves, that is not earthly. Interesting, right? Do a little reading if you're into the alien files. I don't know how to cover those on a podcast like this because a lot of it is visual, and a lot of those videos I've seen online anyway, when people swore it wasn't true. Now it's true, and the U.S. government admits there's been contact with something that they can't explain. That's what they're saying for now. They're dipping our toe in. They're easing us into the news that, well, God knows how integrated alien societies are with us. But we're getting there. We're slowly getting there. Now let's go to second day in a row here with Michelle Rempel-Garner. She is the Conservative Party of Canada's critic on immigration. She was talking yesterday about some of these failed asylum claimants that are getting the Cadillac of healthcare benefits here in Canada. These are people that shouldn't be here that are getting way better health coverage than you and I get as taxpayers. Listen to this.
Recently, Conservatives put forward a motion to restrict access to health benefits for failed asylum claimants to emergency life-saving care only. And that motion was defeated by the Liberal government. And a Liberal MP, as well as, frankly, pundits on political panels, said that that issue wasn't a problem, that there wasn't data to support that position. Well, the Parliamentary Budget Officer released a report this morning that shows, unfortunately, that Conservatives were right. So this morning, the Parliamentary Budget Officer released a fairly damning report on the interim federal health program's costs. And this is the program that was designed to be a program to provide temporary health benefits to legitimate refugees who are fleeing war zones. Over the last decade, under the Liberals' failed asylum policies and severely broken asylum system, the costs of that program have ballooned over 1,200%. But we have more data today on how that breaks down, particularly for failed asylum claimants. So nearly 74,000 failed asylum claimants are accessing coverage through this program, which provides benefits that Canadians don't have access to, like vision care, like physiotherapy. The Parliamentary Budget Officer also showed that the costs will continue to skyrocket. the Liberals have also said that, oh, no, this isn't a problem because we've got Bill C-12 and X, Y, and Z. But the reality is that many experts are saying that their half measures won't cut it, that they're not going to work, that Bill C-12 is going to be challenged in court. And the data that the Parliamentary Budget Officer put out today suggests that is right, because the backlog is continuing to grow. The amount of time that even bogus asylum claimants spend accessing these programs continues to increase, and the numbers are astronomical. I mean, like, seeing this today, $822 million was spent in fiscal year 2024, 2025. And you look at some of the services, counseling services have increased by 11%, costing taxpayers $38.7 million last year. And what the Parliamentary Budget Officer also said was that backlogs and slow processing add up to $72 million in extra annual costs for each month of delay. So, the Parliamentary Budget Officer today, I think provided data that validated the need for the motion that we passed. And today we are re-upping calls for the Liberals to support our motion, which they voted against.
The report found 74,000 failed claimants are accessing Canadian health care, while costs have surged 1,200% under this Liberal government. You've got to be kidding me. Canadians can't put food on the table, and they're getting counseling services? These are failed claimants. They shouldn't be here. When you get told no, you should leave on the first plane out of here. They're still here, and they're getting better benefits than regular Canadians are getting. How are people not more outraged at that? I think this is something we got to talk more about. I'm seeing the hatred about immigration policies from the last 10 years in the comments on social media to Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons has basically become the face of Canadian anger about immigration. And while I don't necessarily have a problem with that, I think you got to keep the focus where the focus should be squarely aimed at this Liberal government. They've allowed it to happen. The Conservatives put up a motion to stop this. The Liberals voted against it so that these people can keep accessing it. You heard the numbers from Michelle, and they were right from the Parliamentary Budget Officer. This is real taxpayer dollars that are getting spent in a very unfair way. Last thing I want to play, probably, I'll do a quick thing on the Western premiers that were doing a little summit in Kananaskis just the other day. I'll do I'll do Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe talking about the possibility of Alberta separating from Canada.
Grow and strengthen our provinces within a united nation in Canada, and that's Saskatchewan's position throughout this as well. Far be it from me, though, I'm not an Albertan, to tell any Albertan what to do and how to vote in the question that's coming before them. The legislation is being followed by the Premier of Alberta by putting essentially both of those questions forward. It's not a binding referendum question, or it is a referendum question, pardon me, but it's not a separation question. It's a question about whether we should even move forward with that. So I don't see an issue with that in any way. I actually see this as the Premier really following the law that they had enacted in the province. Now listen, the frustrations are real. We feel those in Saskatchewan. But I would say, whether it be to Albertans or other Canadians, and you're right, I am a Canadian in a neighbouring province, that we should also take into account the opportunity that we see coming, the change in conversation that has come from Prime Minister Carney, and it is markedly different. And I think there is a path forward for us to have much more success in the opportunities that lie before us than we maybe even would have had 2-3 years ago.
Bravo. That was Scott Moe talking to the CBC on power and politics. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's how it's done. That's the tone. We understand why Alberta is angry. We'd like them to stay in Canada, but what Premier Smith is doing is perfectly appropriate. Contrast that, a measured response, a responsible response from a Canadian Premier in Scott Moe, to the exchange that happened between Danielle Smith of Alberta and Wab Kinew of Manitoba. This is 2.5 minutes long. This is the last clip I'm going to play for you today.
I mean, the way we're going to seek clarity is through the court. We think that the duty to consult is meant to be looked at through a lens of major projects, and we take that very seriously. We had an Indigenous roundtable yesterday where I shared with the premiers how we're using our Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation to help underwrite major project participation, to give revenues to Indigenous nations, and how we want to continue engaging with Indigenous nations on that. But the issue, I think, in the court is whether that duty to consult should apply to citizen-initiated petitions. And that's where I think that the court erred in judgment, and I think it's also anti-democratic, the decision that they made. But we'll make the arguments in court about what the limits to duty to consult ought to be, and we'll see how that conversation goes. There's a couple of rounds that we have to go through, obviously, to Court of Appeal, probably also to the Supreme Court of Canada. But we want to make sure that we have a very clear understanding of what the duty to consult really means and what it doesn't mean. And I think at the moment there's a lack of clarity on that.
And you've talked a lot about...
Sorry, I'd like to respond. So I think we know that is not correct, a lot of what you just said there, Premier Smith. Specifically, and we spoke about this, so I don't mind repeating this. It is not up to the petition gatherers to fulfill the duty to consult. It is up to you as the Alberta government to fulfill the duty to consult. And in this case, when there's clearly going to be an impact on well-established existing hunting and fishing rights by putting up an international border, if some would have their way, the judge ruled, and I would agree with the judge's ruling, that is going to infringe on rights. And so there is a duty to consult. Now, to take a step further, for the Albertan who's been frustrated over the lack of progress on pipelines, you've got the Premier of BC announcing LNG, we're working on Churchill, we're working on northern trade corridors. This is a moment to get big things built in Manitoba. And I would say now is the time to work together. Why don't we hold off on this referendum talk for a year or two and see if we get these pipelines under construction? Because at the end of the day, we want Canada to succeed. We're all very proud of this place. I myself am very, very patriotic. And what I think it's important for us to say when we hear this sorts of discussion happening here in Alberta is for us to say, okay, thank you First Nations in Alberta for hitting the pause button on this. Now the rest of Canada, let's work together and show Alberta just how appreciated they are in the rest of this country.
So that's Wab Kinew, who is desperate for attention. Desperate to get noticed, for anyone to pay attention. I don't even know if people in Manitoba pay attention to this guy all that closely, to be honest with you. It doesn't mean anything when Wab Kinew says, sure, we want Alberta to stay, and we're sensitive to what Alberta's concerns are, and then blow them off and say, let's put this on pause for a couple more years and see if anything gets done. Alberta had enough. They reached their boiling point. It doesn't necessarily have to happen on Wab Kinew's timeline. They had enough, and they're going to have a vote to decide on whether or not they're going to have a referendum on separation that is binding. There's nothing wrong with that. Scott Moe is absolutely right. Wab Kinew and David Eby and all these other jokers are looking for attention. And frankly, the way they're going about this is not going to work. It is going to backfire. It is going to fuel the separation movement. It is. All of those clips are going to be showed to regular, everyday Albertans so that those who want to separate can show to those people, this country doesn't care about you. Wait a couple more years, will you? Okay, all right. Duty to consult. First Nations lands rights. Yeah, we do have a duty to consult. Absolutely, there's a duty to consult. But that doesn't mean that's the final decision either. There's a lot that needs to happen before a referendum on separation by Alberta. And by the way, Quebec, I am completely surprised at this, but all of the messaging coming out of Quebec seems to be supportive of Alberta because a lot of Quebec's representation in the House of Commons is from the Bloc Québécois, who are also separatists. They're waiting to see how Alberta goes because they're waiting for their turn. This isn't going well. We need a prime minister to unite this country, and the best way to do that is to make the middle class prosperous. And until somebody starts giving a damn about the middle class, these problems are going to keep happening. Friends, that's my time for today. I'll catch you right back here tomorrow with another episode of Scott Fox After 9.
Oh yeah,
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Ever wonder how to make hosting look effortless? Here's a secret. Getting ahead of the mess with new Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Just lightly wet the counter beforehand so the paper grips and stays in place. Then lay down the Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper so drips and spills stay on the paper, not all over your kitchen counter. You can roll out dough, prep a party spread, or cook alongside family. When you're done, cleanup is as simple as lifting the paper and revealing that clean counter underneath. Effortless. You can use it for cooking and baking prep and even crafting, especially when you need extra working space. Because when the mess is already handled, you can focus on what matters: the food, the people, and the moment. It may look effortless, but now you know it's Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Take a tip from me: wet it, set it, prep it, done. Make it easy. Make it with Reynolds Kitchens countertop prep paper. Available now in the Reynolds Wrap aisle in Walmart, Target, Amazon, and Costco.